Hi everybody, welcome back to MTR 204 class. So today we are going to focus on week number 9, the syllabus. So what you'll need today is just take a look at your syllabus and then get out your textbook, and we're going to be starting on page 134, which is Ambient Instruments. So looking at the outline first, in week 9 we have chapter 9, Ambient Percussion, chapter 10, Found Sound, and chapter 11, Percussion, Musical Form, and the Therapeutic Process. So that's what I'm going to go over today, and then we'll get on to what you might do in the future for the next couple weeks, okay? So starting on page 134, we have Ambient Instruments. I'm just going to read a couple areas here. If you've got a pencil or a highlighter, highlighting a few things just to get the salient points across would be good for you to remember. All right. The word ambient means of or relating to immediate surroundings. It's derived from the Latin word of the same spelling, meaning going around. Ambient percussion instruments may create sounds we associate with the environment, and some examples would be wind, water, and crickets. Probably things that you know already. So in contrasting ambient sounds with the other instruments we've done, they don't usually do like a definite rhythm. They're more amorphous and sort of, they may just sound out in the air, but they may not have an underlying rhythm. But they certainly do vary in timbre and intensity. Ambient instruments have been important in the creation of audio from movies and cartoons. Ambient sounds have facilitated the viewer's oral perceptions of storms and showers, floods and ripples, tree branches, gusts, and so on. So I'm sure you've tried this experiment, watch a movie, maybe a really scary movie, without the sound on, then watch it with the sound. Yeah, the sound effects are huge in creating that environment. So as percussionists or music therapists, we don't even need those visual components. We're just going to create environments with the sounds that we're making. All right, now I'm on page 135, and this is the ocean drum. You have one at school. I don't have an exact ocean drum, but I have something similar. Let me just go over what an ocean drum is. I think most of you know. They usually consist of a flat cylinder with synthetic heads. All right, so it's like a frame drum that's got heads on both sides that are plastic, and there are metal beads that move around inside the drum, and they resonate. So they sort of slosh around, and you've probably used those maybe in a circle or semicircle, passed it around to one another. You can close your eyes, and let's say a receptive technique for your clients could be that you might move the ocean drum and they could close their eyes and imagine a scene, for example. It's pretty cool. Years ago, for a multiple percussion piece, I bought this thing called a bash, and I guess it's for any kind of percussionist, maybe a drum set player, where you can put on a clamp and then maybe hit it with a stick. But it's similar to an ocean drum in that it's like a plastic tube, and it's got really teeny ball bearings in it. So you can experiment with the speed and intensity, right? Very cool sound. And part of that is because it's plastic and metal, so it's pretty loud. Let's go on now to the rain stick. Again, left my rain sticks at school. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what a rain stick is. I'm just going to read the definition here in the middle of page 136. The rain sticks consist of a cylinder filled with beads or seeds that strike against each other and strike against protrusions found along the inside of the instrument. When turned over, the many beads strike the protrusions and create a sound similar to rain. So the key here, the difference between a rain stick and a shaker, as you probably know, is the shaker doesn't have any intrusions to the beads sloshing around. So they just go, you can just go back and forth. If you tip it up and down like this, you just get one sound. But a rain stick has interruptions to those beads falling, and that's what makes it trickle down slower. And I'm sure you've maybe at least read about how to make one, maybe form a paper towel tube and put some popcorn in there. You can maybe stick some toothpicks or something in there if you wanted to make your own rain stick. But that's also a really nice ambient sound, and you can create differences in intensity with how fast you move it, just like the ocean drum. Okay, moving on now to the thunder tube and spring drum. Believe it or not, I have two of these here. My husband used to do some teaching for pre-K, and he collected a bunch of sounds. So I was thinking you could even make one of these if you had some sort of like a can or something like this, maybe a coffee can with a plastic lid. You need a long spring. If you have one, it's actually just inserted in the middle of the head, and then this container acts as a resonating chamber. So this is a thunder tube or spring drum. And I have a smaller one as well. And we're moving on to wind chimes and marked trees now. Keeping in mind that for all of these things, put in the back of your mind that these are sounds that are generated from instruments that may be able to be substituted with found objects. So just keep thinking with that lens on, all right? So wind chimes consist of just any set of multiple things that are strung up together that hit one another. Okay, could be almost any material that makes any sort of contact sound. Let's see. I have one from a long time ago. Maybe you have some of these on your porch or something. This is an example of ceramic. I have some here that are really cool. These are shells. This was a gift a long time ago. I think I was a senior and somebody gave me these. So it has a really nice tinkly sound. I don't know, if some of you have shell collections and you could find a way to wrap some string around them and hang them up, that would sound really nice. So wind chimes are sort of the generic description of any things that are clunking together that are suspended. The specific one that's called the marked tree is usually grated pieces of metal like this. So that's like a trademark, a marked tree. Very common sound for like a magical sound. You can purchase it. You've heard that many times, I'm sure. I played it many times. When I was a senior, my dad made me one. This is a piece of wood, and then he used some clips that you used to use on paper. And then I don't know where he got these metal pieces, but he put holes in them and strung them up with, I think it's dental floss. So here's a homemade set with metal sounds. So these are graded, but they don't have to be graded, I guess, if you made your own. So the last sentence on page 138, just as a conclusion, says, the sound of wind chimes and marked trees are evocative, noticeable without necessarily being intrusive. So they're very gentle sounding. Now the next section I thought was interesting food for thought, because we are heading towards doing a final project, which I will explain and I'll write it down, modifying the original final project. But I kind of like this lens, which is looking at sounds through the different elements and how you might categorize them. So I'm on page 139, and it says Experiential 25, Elemental Play. The four common elements are earth, wind, fire, and water. We can creatively classify percussion instruments and/or percussion sounds within these element types and consider what these elements may represent to a group. Consider the following classifications or change them around, and creatively add your descriptors and instrument ideas to the list. So something you can do for homework is just like look at each column. Let's say earth. The description that the author has is grounded, and he's thought of things like drums and scrapers in that category. You might think of other things that sound grounded to you, all right? There's not an absolute set of answers. We have wind, could be described as mobile and light. So chimes and whistles, so literally a whistle blowing into something would have wind going through it. So I have an ocarina here. Some of you might have something like this, or maybe you have a recorder. use that, even though it's not exactly a percussion instrument. Sometimes percussionists are asked to play those, so we can expand our vocabulary there. Volatile and purifying describes fire, and he has gongs and the thunder drum in that category. You could add some more in there. And water, he describes as mobile and life-affirming, and certainly taken literally, the ocean drum and the rain stick could go in there. So think of some more of instruments, and especially found sound objects that could go there. That's a possible sort of overarching idea for a composition, for example, through the elements. Now we're going on to page 140. This is found sound and do-it-yourself percussion. This is probably the most important part of these 3 chapters for you right now, because this is what you're going to end up using for your final projects, trying to be creative at home and finding things where you can make different timbres and sounds from things that you find around you. If we go on page 140 in the middle, it starts with drums. Certainly any container that you could strike could be considered a drum. The 3 top things they list are water bottles, trash cans, and plastic buckets here. You can also, like the larger coffee cans, if you still have the top on them, I think you could find a number of things that could serve as a drum. If we go to page 141, homemade shakers, the best way to understand how to create homemade shakers is to experiment. You may wish to assemble a batch of different containers and fillers, then use your ears to decide what you like. So this is probably the thing you're most familiar with, taking a variety of containers and then trying out different things to put inside. Something very small, like quinoa is very small and light. Rice is a little bit bigger. You've got beans, you've got uncooked popcorn. You'll appreciate this, possibly. This is my Crown Royal container from a bottle of whiskey, which I no longer have. Your parents may have a container like this, I don't know, with some rice in it. So this is my Crown Royal shaker. That's a pretty nice sound, doesn't it? You also may have, rattling around in your house, a random maraca from when you were a little kid, right? Okay. Got some different pitches here. I have a really cool one. This is made out of the horn from a deer or a buffalo, I think. So this would be a Native American rattle. This is not exactly in the same category, but I brought out my scraper because it was part of the earthy sounds. So anything that could be scraped with ridges on it, like cans, like soup cans, if you take the paper off, that's a good idea. So scrapers are at the bottom of this page. The author points out that somebody used a deck of cards where you can kind of flip it. That's kind of a scraping sound. A box of combs. I don't know anybody that has a box of combs, but if you do, you could use that. Ice cube trays. You could drag a fork or spoon or something, or maybe a chopstick across that. And then, as I said, plastic soup containers are good for that. So start collecting some found objects at your house. Be creative. Think about how many different sounds you can get. Maybe it's a good thing. You're going to be getting rid of some junk that's been sitting around and find a good use for it. Okay, last chapter for today is on page 142. It's called Percussion, Musical Form, and the Therapeutic Process. We're not going to get in super detail here, but I want to point out some overarching things that I think are important food for thought. The first thing is on page 143, percussion and musical form. So you can think about this as just a general idea of how you might compose something or how music is put together. So it looks like rhythm is the foundational element. So let's say you want to create a rhythm, maybe a 1 or 2 measure phrase. After you do that, then you might decide, well, what timbre do I want that rhythm on? Do I want it on a skin timbre or a wood timbre? And then it goes to the next level. Besides timbre, we have pitch. So we have high and low, we have relative pitch, we have specific pitch. Within pitch, we have melody and harmony. And some of you may want to use some instruments that have a melodic component. You could also sing, for example. In terms of harmony, the idea I'm toying with is the possibility for you to collaborate with a fellow student on layering some things, like sending a recording to your friend and then having them layer it and actually make it a duet. I don't know if that's possible, but harmony may be one of the parameters that we're going to use. And certainly, even if you just have rhythm and timbre, dynamics are going to be a super important element in any composition or any experience that you're having with your clients that doesn't involve a melodic instrument. One last set of concepts here, moving on to 144. This is a discussion of rhythm, and I'm just going to pare it down to something that I think is the most important. Now, starting on 145, the first full paragraph says, "Rhythm is also a fundamental element of music, asserted as the most fundamental of all. Sound and therefore music occurs over time. Music may exist without melody or harmony, or at least by the common Western interpretations of such. It cannot exist without sound moving through time, without rhythm." Gaston notes rhythm as the organizer and energizer of music, and also states that percussion expresses rhythm more convincingly than any other instrumentation. If you go down to pulse and rhythmic grounding, these three rhythms are things that I just want you to highlight and think about these in using with a drum circle with your clients. So in order to get everybody to sort of coalesce around the same thing, using a grounding pulse is very helpful. It's the most basic way to get people to play together. And the first one that the author notes is just the quarter note pulse. So you could just establish that on a drum or any other instrument and get the whole group organized around that pulse, and then you can improvise on top of that. Going to the next page, 146, we have a variation on that, which is the accented quarter note pulse. It just has a little bit more motion to it, a little more definition. And then the one I think is really cool that has a little syncopation in it is called the heartbeat pulse. That's also on the top of 146, and we have so a great way to start your drum circle using one of those grounding rhythms. I think I've demonstrated all the instruments here. Look for more coming soon. I'm going to start the next segment, which is covered under this week, practicing the hand drumming rhythms. We're going to be doing that on the table, and you'll need a handout for that. So I will send you an email, and please stay well and take care of yourselves. Thank you.